A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Today, we are going to be talking with Michelle Pila. She's the president of Wholesome Riches Incorporated. She started her teaching career in Camden, New Jersey in about 2001, where she began to have a growing passion and vision for helping students find God and find healing for their families. This vision turned into a reality when a principal gave her the opportunity to begin a weekend feeding program for the school families in about 2018. And by God's grace, and with the help of the Baptist Resource Network and Keystone Fellowship, Wholesome Riches was born and has grown by 300% in just 1 year. Wow. She continues to fine-tune the mission and evaluate how to best glorify God and begin a spirit movement in the city of Camden. Welcome, Michelle. What a bio. My goodness.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this podcast with you.
I'm so excited to get into your story because I already know it. So can you tell me, when we spoke, you had said that your life has had many instances of choosing to follow God into the unknown in obedience. Could you explain to us what those times felt like for you?
Yeah. Oftentimes they felt really scary. I was unsure of how things were going to turn out, depending on what the situation was. I didn't know if we would have enough money to take care of our children. We have 5 children.
Wow.
It was a lot of times I would question myself, am I hearing correctly? I would start doubting myself, but not necessarily doubting God, but doubting that I could hear correctly. Mm-hmm. So all of these things would often take place before I was to make a move.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think it's hard for all of us. It's really easy to doubt. Even though we trust God, some of the things he asks us to do just are very much out of the box.
Yeah, for sure.
And they stretch us. So when was the first time that you remember stepping out in that way?
I would say that it was back in 2004 is really the pivotal moment for me. When Matt and I, my husband and I, wanted to start a family, and I was full force teaching in Camden. I was there and going into my 4th year, with which, if you're any teachers know, that's a 10-year year, and it's a really important year.
Yeah.
And I was in my master's degree program, really knee deep in that, trying to get my principal certificate, and we had all these things going on. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get pregnant. And month after month after month, this would happen. And then, so I started praying and getting a quiet time. And it was there that I felt that the Lord was telling me that I needed to be willing to give up my career, not necessarily give it up, but be willing.
Wow.
And that was so hard for me because I really I kind of worshiped my career, which I didn't realize at the time. But so after wrestling with God for a while and dropping it, lo and behold, Samantha was on the way not very long after that. And
wow. Yeah. Wow. Oh, look at that timing. That's amazing. Did that experience make it any easier to be obedient the next time?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It made it, I mean, not that it made it easy, but it
No.
made it much easier because I had saw for my own self how faithful God was to us.
Yeah, that's right. So each time I think we forget, but then if we look back, I love to keep a journal. I journal
Yeah.
everything, and it really helps me remember when I'm having those moments. Oh wow, he did that and that. And I think we so easily can tell other people, but God can do anything. And then
So
we kind of forget it ourselves sometimes.
absolutely. So good to write a journal.
Yeah. So I think the world responds differently to a word like obedience than Christians do. Has it been difficult trying to explain your obedience to people when God asks you to do things that maybe don't make sense to them?
Yes. Yes. Sometimes, honestly, as much as we love our families, of course, I think family can be really hard
Yeah.
because they've seen you grow up and then they see you make these changes and now all of a sudden you're doing things that really don't make any sense.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes that has been for us personally the hardest crossroad that we had to encounter was with family and really close friends that
Yeah.
knew us and just thought maybe we were like losing our minds. So
Yeah. I mean, you look in the Bible though, and look at some of those stories. I'm sure a lot of the characters in the Bible went through that too.
yeah,
When Noah was building an ark and it had never rained before in all of time.
gosh, I think about that sometimes.
Me too, because I
Um,
have the same issue with my family. A lot of them don't believe in Jesus and they don't understand what
yeah,
I'm doing, or I use words like God's kingdom and they look at me like I'm
yeah,
insane.
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Now, as you dealt with that, do you think that strengthened your faith in any way?
definitely, because it made us, like the verse that comes to my mind often is if you're not willing to leave, Jesus said, if you're not willing to leave your family, your house, you're this, you're that for me, then you're not worthy of me.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, you know, we just really press into him and give us the strength
Yeah.
to face that, whatever that is. And he's always it has always worked out where we always were able to keep great relationships with our family.
Hmm.
So yes, it has strengthened my faith for sure.
That's awesome. So what are some of the sacrifices that you have made to follow God's leading?
Well, kind of how I touched on that back in 2004, I left my career.
Hmm.
And I hate to say leave it because what God had to give me was so much better than what I was holding on to. But
Hmm.
I had to leave the master degree program and kind of just never look back with that. We had our dream house we had in a local area, and we had foster kids, and we just thought we would live forever and until we were old and gray in that house. And when Matt went into the ministry full time, we couldn't afford that house anymore, so we had to
Yeah.
leave that house behind and all the contents in the house. And we actually moved in with my parents in a very tiny little attic, so we we had to give up material. I would say
Yeah.
it was all material things that we had to give up.
Yeah. And then when you give them up, you realize they're not really all that you thought they were.
Exactly, it was actually freeing on the other side of it.
I bet. I bet. I mean, I went through a kind of similar. I didn't move into an attic, but I moved into the top floor of my parents' home to care for them during COVID, and we had to get rid of about half of the things from my home. I
Wow.
gave some away, and I gave some to people for ministry, and other things I literally threw away because there just wasn't room. So
Yeah.
I kind of understand what that's like, and freeing is a really good word.
Mm. Yeah.
I think we don't realize how tied we are to all the stuff.
Yeah.
We're constantly being told, get more stuff, get more stuff. You deserve the stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. Although I feel like there's a movement of minimalism right now, which isn't such a bad thing.
There is. I think the pandemic has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
People are kind of looking at their lives and reevaluating.
Yeah. For sure.
So, can you tell us a bit about the time that you were feeling called back to Camden after 10 years? You told me that you were unqualified for the job, but you went anyway. What was the result?
Yeah, so our little guy Justin, our fifth child, he was going to kindergarten, and again, I left my career back in 2001, so at
Mhm.
this time it's 2018, and I feel this tug to go back and apply for a teaching job in Camden. And so I did. I jumped through all the hoops, and the job was for a health and phys ed teacher. And this has always been my issue. I'm not phys ed certified. I'm only health education certified.
Mhm.
And I did the interview. The interview went great, but they looked at me and said, "You're not going to get this job, even though we really like you. We loved the interview.
Mhm.
You're not qualified. You don't have the right certification." So I said, okay, I came home, I was a little disappointed, but we trusted this was God's will, and, chalked it up as such. And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call that I did get the job, and I was going to start at HB Wilson Family School in Camden. And so it was kind of surreal. And we really knew that God had called me there because I really got the job against the odds. I should have never been there to begin with.
Yeah, that's just really amazing. That's unprecedented that you didn't have the certification, but you got hired anyway.
Yes. And they even told me I wouldn't get it. So that was the other ironic thing.
That's amazing. How good to know that you were exactly where God wanted you.
Yes, for sure.
So when you got there and you started, what were the children like there? What was the environment? How did it affect you?
Oh my. Okay. I'm going to go back there. It was a very rough. As soon as I walked in September, I knew already that this was going to be heavy. So the children, the school I used to work at in Camden, it was a high school. It was a much different kind of atmosphere. So coming into this school,
Mhm.
the the children were very violent towards each other, and they were young. The school went from kindergarten through 8th grade, but the students were behaving, I mean, really aggressive and violent towards each other. And
Wow.
this was every day, and the way they spoke to each other, and it was just kind of chaos all the time and all the
Mm.
time. And it was extremely draining, that environment. At the same time, I would look into their little eyes and they would want to hug me and, oh,
Mm.
Miss Bella, Miss Bella, Miss Bella. We would do hugs all day long. So it was
Wow.
it was like this mix of of really hard, but also really, really, just God driven passion for the kids there.
Wow. That sounds like you're just immersed in this whole new world.
Yes.
And it does. It sounds like day after day that would be something that would be draining to you. Now, at the time, your husband, he's a pastor of a church plant, which I'm certain requires a lot of your time, and you have children at home. Did you feel pulled by all of your responsibilities?
Oh my goodness, did I? Yeah. So the church plant was only at that time about 3 years old. And if anybody knows anything about starting a business or a church plant, I mean, it's a lot up front. You have to do a lot
Hmm.
up front. And at the time, I was the youth director.
Okay.
So literally from Friday through Sunday, it was just church activities, planning events, big church service, and then all the classes or whatever we would offer on Sunday
Wow.
evening. So the other caveat to the school was that they didn't give me a curriculum to use. So I had to come home from work, which was very draining emotionally and physically.
Hmm.
And again, I'm teaching something I'm not qualified to teach. And then I would have to come up with curriculum
Oh,
every
wow.
night when I would get home. So I was burning at both ends, to say the least. And then let's not forget the 5 kids that need a mommy. So
Oh my gosh. That sounds like a lot. Did
yeah.
did all of that create that sounds like a situation that would breed anxiety. Did that create any anxiety for you?
Yeah, it's funny you ask me that because so I started in September. By November, this weird thing was happening to me that I didn't know, called anxiety. I've never had this before, and I'm sure many people would say, how couldn't I have recognized that? But I would be standing in the store at ShopRite, not even thinking about work, and all of
Right.
a sudden I would feel like I was going to faint. And this kept happening to me. My head would get real dizzy. I
Wow.
couldn't focus. I would start feeling like I was going to pass out at any given moment. And so I would go to the doctors. I thought it was my heart. I thought it was this and that. And then, at the end of these testings, the doctor looked at me and said, I believe you're dealing with anxiety and you just have too much going on.
Wow.
And you're going to have to figure this out or you're not going to make it very much longer. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a daunting answer.
It was a daunting answer, but she was right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, you didn't recognize it because you'd never had it before. And that happens with a lot of different new seasons that we enter, things that are just so unfamiliar. As a strong Christian, what was it like for you when you realized you were dealing with anxiety? I think as Christians, we feel like we're not supposed to be anxious about anything.
Yeah. I think my initial reaction was like I felt like I wasn't measuring up to whatever God had called me to, because I knew he called me there. Like we said before, I shouldn't have been there. So then I was doubting, well, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing enough of? And that was my initial reaction. And then I guess my secondary reaction was just kind of disappointment that I couldn't handle all of it.
Yeah.
Even though it was unreasonable to even I wouldn't expect that of anyone else. So,
yeah. But you wanted to do your best and you were trying to follow God's will. And that had to have been a really difficult moment in your life.
It was.
Well, luckily God doesn't leave us in those places. They're normally bridges to something else, right?
Yeah.
Sure. So you told me that you decided because of all that you had to quit your job. Mm-hmm. So can you share a bit about what happened when you did that with us?
Yeah. So it was the end of November and a doctor just told me I needed to make a move. I talked to my husband and he agreed wholeheartedly, even though financially we weren't sure how we were going to make it, because the other part of me going back to work was that, we needed to meet the budget. Yeah. So we knew something's got to change here. So I made an appointment with the principal. And again, I've never met with her before. And she took me into her office and she asked me what was going on. And I didn't want to get emotional, but I did. And I just explained to her that I'm a pastor's wife. I'm a mother of 5 kids. I really love the kids here. My heart is absolutely breaking for them. And I love the staff. However, I am getting all these busy spells. I'm really burning at both ends and I'm going to have to put in my resignation at the end of December. And she literally sat back in her chair with her arms folded, just staring deep into my eyes, which felt like it was 20 minutes. It was probably 10 seconds. But she looked at me and she said, Michelle, you're not going anywhere. Wow. You're pregnant with something. And until you give birth, you're not leaving.
Wow, that is powerful. Wow. What did you do?
I was shocked, first of all. So once I picked my jaw off the ground, I said, well, I don't know what to say. I can't work full time. She said, well, what do you need? I said, I need part-time. So she said, well, then we're going to give you part-time. And I said, but what does that mean? And she called my partner down, my phys ed partner, and she worked out the schedule and she let me leave every day between 12:30 and 1 p.m.
Wow.
On a full salary. And
what?
On one condition. There was a condition.
What's the condition?
Remember, we're in a public school. Condition was that I started a staff prayer meeting every day before school.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You probably would have paid her to do that.
I would have. I actually wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to get it started.
Wow. Okay, so like I said a question ago, God took this you couldn't do it yourself moment where you were feeling anxiety and there was too much on your plate and you made a decision that you're going to have to quit.
Yeah.
And then look what he turned it into. So,
Miraculous.
wow. What were the results of those times in prayer?
With the staff,
Yeah.
well, I mean, first of all, there were many other Christians there that I didn't know. We didn't know there were other Christians in the building. So it
Wow.
brought all of us together. So many of them were going through like I said, the students there were very difficult. It was not an easy place. So it just really encouraged all of us
Yeah.
that every morning we knew we were going to get this encouragement that God is going to strengthen us. And we just began praying over all the families, all the students, and we would see breakthroughs with different kids all throughout the rest of the year. Uh,
Wow.
so it was just to know every day you were starting your day off like that, it's almost like you could feel a blanket of peace over the school.
Absolutely. And the sense of community, in
Mhm.
addition to God moving and knitting you together, must have just been really, really wonderful at that time.
It really was. It really
Wow.
was.
That's amazing. I love hearing people's stories because things like this, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah,
You know?
no, not at all.
Wow, that's so great. So I ask most of my guests this question. I just love the answers. So if you could give your younger self any advice, what would it be?
Mm. Yeah, that is do you have like 5 hours or no? No.
Sure, we can
Um,
edit it together.
yeah, I'll get just the highlights there. I would say to bathe every decision in prayer and don't just do things because they sound right or they feel like that would be the next logical step.
Hmm.
Um, because I made a lot of decisions impetuously just because I thought that would be the right thing to do
Yeah,
in my younger years. Choose the humble road. Don't go for the bigger car. Don't go for the, bigger
right.
house, the best this, the best that. Go for the lesser thing and invest your money in the eternal. And it's so much more worth it than
Wow,
than the material.
absolutely. That is really good advice.
And then I would say as a young mother especially, give yourself grace. If other people judge you, then that is their problem.
Yeah.
It's not my problem. God,
Amen.
God is gracious to those who have young children and
Hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah. I think all of us, and especially moms, but all of us need to give ourselves a little more grace because we're so
yes.
hard on ourselves. All
Hmm.
good advice. I think your younger self could have benefited from all of that. But I think
Yes.
that's the whole point of the question is like we don't know that stuff until we live a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had told me that you were eventually laid off.
Hmm.
What was that like for you? How did it make you feel?
Yeah. So the ironic twist in all that is, I continued like that throughout the year, and then 2009, 2018 turned to 19, and then here comes June, and I got a letter of layoff. So I talked to the principal, and she said, basically the bottom line is either have to go back to school to be phys ed certified, or we
Right.
have to lay you off. And I just looked at her, and she said, I know you're not going to go back to school, so don't even worry about it. So I said, okay. So it was different. At first I felt like I was kind of subpar,
Mm,
that I wasn't good enough to have the job that the other teachers had.
yeah.
So I guess I had to work through that. I had never received unemployment before, so I almost felt like maybe I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I can get that. When you realized that maybe this was a provision from God though, did that change the way that you felt about it?
Yeah, it quickly changed. As soon as, things started coming in and clicking, and we knew what we were supposed to be doing in Camden, and then I was receiving this provision monthly.
Mhm.
I was just thanking God. I mean, it was such a gift.
Yeah. I mean,
to our family.
so he's providing, you're getting this money. So God sets you up with that, which is completely wonderful.
Yeah.
And then he's been talking to you through this whole time about this idea, which ended up becoming Wholesome Riches.
Mhm.
So then you're able to move out in that ministry.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about Wholesome Riches. I know it's a big question, but
Okay. Well, I'll tell you just a little bit before that. So I would say maybe in like March or April of 2019, we started meeting with the principal, me and a couple people from Send Philly and the BRN, which is they do a lot of work in South Jersey and Pennsylvania, the Baptist Resource Network. So we
mm-hmm.
started meeting with them and just basically picking the brains of the principal and the guidance counselor and the family coordinator, saying, what do you need here? What does the school really need?
Yeah.
And so we would begin working through that process, and they really came up with something called a weekend food bag, and that was, they asked if we could put together bags of food that would be dropped off on Friday that would have things in it that the kids could eat themselves, that they didn't need parents to put together for them. Because what a huge problem at that school was, well, that's a very high traffic drug area, prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, really dense with that.
Yeah.
And what they were finding was that at school, the kids would get breakfast, lunch, and oftentimes dinner if they were in an after school program, which most of them were. And then they would go home on the weekends and literally not eat anything until they returned on Monday.
Wow.
And this was like epidemic in the school. And the principal said, we just can't have this. And, we need to do something about it, but we don't have the resources or the means to do it.
Yeah.
So that was our plan. So when I got laid off in June, we began working on that program, putting that together and how that would work. And basically, Wholesome Riches was born, and that is the nonprofit arm that we use to do this ministry.
Wow. So God provided for you so you could provide for others. That's beautiful.
Yes, he did.
Wow. That is so amazing.
Yeah.
So you're doing Wholesome Riches, you found the need, you're starting to provide, and a pandemic comes.
Mm-hmm.
How did God use the pandemic to grow your efforts and provide abundant resources?
So from September through really March, when the pandemic started, we were doing at that time 2 schools. So we would have 25 bags for each school. We would pack at a local pantry in Camden. We would get different food donated to us. Sometimes we would buy some food. We would take the Keystone truck and load up all the bags and then deliver them to the schools, interact with the kids as much as we could. And we were also planning after school programs like the Good News Club, which is, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like a evangelistic kind of outreach where you tell Bible stories and stuff like that. And the one school was so excited about it that actually all the parents asked to join the after school club with their kids. So it was going to be awesome. Church up in there. Okay. Like we knew, this is going to be church. This is not just going to be a little kiddie Bible club. This is going to be mom. This is going to be dad. This is going to be, they were even inviting their aunts and uncles to come to this Bible club.
What? That is so cool.
Oh my goodness. Our minds were blown. That was supposed to start at the end of March. And so needless to say, we were totally bummed when the pandemic happened. So it definitely, we had to pivot, and God pivoted for us. So basically we weren't allowed on the school property anymore. No one was on the school property. So through a local connection, there was a place in the city called the Neighborhood Center that was attached to a church, and they welcomed us in free of charge. And we were able to basically get free food from a local pantry because of the pandemic. They had so much food in overabundance. They were actually begging us to come and pick it up.
Wow.
And it was free. It didn't cost us a dime.
Wow, that's great.
And before that, like we would always be wondering where our food was going to come from. We were always praying for abundance. Oh God, please send us abundance, please, please, please. That now we were at a point where we had so much food, we didn't even know what to do with all of it. So it pivoted, because instead of being at the schools, now we were at a local neighborhood center, and families would come to us. And at that time, we jumped from 50 to 80. So we were serving 80 families at that time.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And to also see, you prayed for abundance, you got abundance.
We got abundance.
Yeah, that's great. So I know that your real heart is for ministering to the children and their families. So how is God using this food ministry to bridge to the children and their families?
So now we're back on school site since November of 2020.
Okay.
And so we get to meet a lot of families. We're at 5 different schools right now. And the food is the front door. The food is the bridge builder. It allows them to know that we're there not to get anything from them. We're there to give, and we're there. And when we do a food distribution, I see it as almost like someone's walking into my home. That's the way we do it. We have music playing. They come, we're happy, smiley, whether you have a mask on or not. Those eyes need to be smiling, and they know we are so happy to see them. We were able to give them devotionals and just different things that other people sponsor. And it builds trust, Amanda. Just that consistent presence is something that's so needed in these areas. And just the consistency builds trust. It just opens doors. You know, the food ministry opens doors to do really the real root cause ministry that we want to do, that our hearts really are desiring to do in the city of Camden.
Wow, that's amazing. And had you sat down with a blank piece of paper and a pen and tried to figure out how to get to where you are now, you know, would it have been anything along the lines of, oh, okay, I want to apply for a job that I'm not qualified for, to,
No.
Would you? So it's amazing just to hear your story backwards, you know, to think back at where you started, what you wanted to do, and that's where God took you.
Yeah. It's so easy to see his hand when you're looking back.
Yeah. Yeah. And what an amazing, and that's the thing. If it was something you could have written down on paper, maybe he wouldn't get the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, wow, that is such a cool story.
And so, just to know that he's so close, like, you know, the Bible says he's a light to my path. He really is, because you don't know that next step you're taking. You really don't know what you're stepping in.
Yeah.
You know, you could be stepping in it. You just don't know. And he is a light, and he just guides the whole twisting, winding, and he continues to guide, because we don't know what's ahead of us.
That's right. The other cool thing is, like, you don't know what you're doing. I know in anything I ever started, I started a publishing company. I wrote books. I'm doing a podcast. I have no idea how to do that, God, you know, but he did. And I'm sure the same. Had you ever started a nonprofit before?
Never.
Yeah. So there's a lot goes into that. It sounds nice and neat, you know, just talking about it, but I'm sure there's all kinds of paperwork and different things that you had to do to get up and going.
I love that you said you didn't have any experience in book writing and podcasts and all that stuff, because I think a lot of people are, and myself included, have been intimidated by those kind of things. Like, oh, I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not techie enough. I'm not this. And anybody who knows me can say, yes, yeah, that's true. You're not. Like, I'm not smart enough. I'm not. I always struggled through school. I always needed tutors. I'm not smart enough to do this. But whatever God calls you to do, he will do it. He will accomplish it. And you're the perfect example of that, Amanda.
Yeah, he really will. And honestly, and it ends up being the most exciting, wonderful work, because you're joining him and you're using some things that he's given you that are talents or you enjoy to do. And my love language is connection. And right now I'm in a position because of the pandemic and my parents where I can't really physically, hug people or get out there like I used to, but I'm able to have these conversations and connect with the people that are listening. And it's what I needed. So he's giving me what I need, and I'm putting his story out there through everybody else's story.
Wow, that's awesome.
So cool how he works. And I get so encouraged and so inspired by what he's doing in everyone's lives. And so does everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say is your mission, your heart, like your hopes and your biggest dream, like the biggest one you can come up with in moving forward with this ministry?
Yeah, I would say that it's really to reach the at-risk youth with the love of God, to see them living out their God-given potential, thriving, and making disciples.
Wow. That is awesome. And I know I personally will be praying for that for you and anyone out there who is a listener who prays. If you would join us in that, that is a great dream.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there a way, I'm going to be putting some information in the show notes, but is there any way that listeners can contribute or help your ministry in any way if they would like to?
Yeah, I would say if they're local to New Jersey, Philly, Pennsylvania, we would love you to come and volunteer with us. We always need the body of Christ there to, and whether you're a Christian or not, that we need you. We need you because people just need to see that we care. And so I would say, yeah, if you go to our website, which I know Amanda will have there, you can go there and you can choose the days you want to volunteer. That would be amazing.
That's awesome. That is so great. Yeah, I'll be including that and any social media ways to get a hold of you. And I just want to take a minute and thank you, Michelle. Talking to you today has been so encouraging, so inspiring. You just reminded me of what it's like to trust God.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me share this story because it encourages me to remember all of it.
Well, I just I pray the best for what you're doing, for you and your family, and for your ministry. And I am grateful that we got a chance to talk to you today. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Amanda. You too. God bless.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. If you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.